All right, good evening, everyone. Today is Monday, June 17th. My name is President Heminger. This is the June General Membership Meeting of the NAACP Arlington Branch. Pastor Davis, if you're able, would you mind opening us up in a robust, illustrious word of prayer?
Robust and illustrious. We don't have that much time. Here we go. Let's pray. Gracious and loving Lord, we thank you so much for this day and for life, health, and strength, and everything that has brought us to this present moment in time. You alone are worthy. We thank you for our president tonight and for his healing. We thank you for every member of the executive board, every member of our branch. We ask your continued blessings upon all that our branch reaches out to do, especially in the areas helping those who are in the greatest need of our community. Be with us tonight, tomorrow, Wednesday, and in the days that are to come, and we'll give you all praise in your name. Amen.
Oh man, thank you so much. All right, I'm going to be dual dutying tonight because I have our secretary is on travel. So you're going to see me trying to admit folks, and you're going to see me trying to run the meeting as well. So I ask for your grace as we navigate this together. It should be very, very short. So before I continue, our national office has established a very clear order of business for all of our branches. Tonight, we're hoping to have a more concise version of that meeting. So I'm wondering if someone would be willing to introduce a motion to suspend the rules so that we
Mr.
can
President,
go ahead.
I'd like to move that we suspend the rules for this meeting.
Great. Thanks so much. Do we have a second? I think Senator.
Second.
Okay, awesome. We got multiple seconds. Let me just write this down since I'm on dual duty tonight. Assistant Secretary. Okay, great. Is there any further discussion on suspending the rules? Any questions, comments, concerns? Well, all those members in favor of supporting that motion, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And
Aye.
Aye.
any members opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. Thanks so much, folks. We have a quick agenda. I'll give you a high-level overview of what to expect. We're going to approve the April and May financial reports. We're going to take a vote on an amicus brief that our outside counsel has been working on. And then we're going to take a motion to support the Thompson family with media action, and then we'll be adjourned. So, Senator Favola, welcome. Good evening. It's so great to see you. I'd love to yield the floor to you to see if you have any opening comments for our members.
No, I'm always happy to join you. It's such an inspiring group. And my only comment is tomorrow is election day. So if you have not voted, please do so tomorrow. We do have a primary in Arlington, and it is for the county board, for one county board seat. Polls will be open 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. So go to your regular polling place. If you're in line by 7 p.m., you will be able to vote. I have endorsed J.D. Spain as my first choice. And I've also endorsed Tenley. It's ranked voting, so you'll have an opportunity to rank the three candidates of your choice. So I guess that's my public service announcement. That's all I have to say, but thank you so much, Michael, for the few minutes that you've given me.
Of course, it's always a pleasure. Thank you for being here with us, and thank you for being one of the few electeds that's with us every month. We really appreciate it. All right, so folks, you may be wondering why we don't have a guest speaker tonight, and why we didn't do a big push from a media standpoint on tonight's meeting, but we did have some sensitive things to take care of. And so because some of them involve legal components, we had to wait until the 11th hour to kind of push out that meeting. Concurrently, we are also having a Juneteenth celebration. It's going to be on Wednesday at Met Park from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. There's a ton of community partners. There's about 500 people that have registered so far. There will be a proclamation from the county. There's going to be African drum beats, invocation from, I believe, our religious affairs chair. It will be a really warm and exciting event. I want to invite you to join us on Wednesday, 4 p.m. at Met Park. Madam Treasurer, do you want to turn the floor over to you to adopt and approve review and approve the April and May financial reports?
Okay, yes, thank you. Do you have them available, Mr. President?
I don't, unfortunately. I can pull them up and we can come back if you don't have them, but
I may have them.
Okay. Let me see
Okay,
if I can send it over to myself.
April. So we are doing April 1st.
Uh-huh.
Just Gotta figure out how to share. Do you see my screen?
Not yet.
May not.
There we go. Looks like it's loading. Yep, we can see it.
You see it?
Yep.
Okay, so this is the April financial report. In April, we had let's see, 10, no, down. $680.90 in expenses. And we had a deposit of $2,411.78 in our operations account. That left us with a balance of $10,749.14. There was no change to our scholarship and justice activities account. So we have a balance of $22,000. And for scholarships, there was also no activity there. So that is the report for April. Any questions? Okay, hearing none, I will move on to May and see if this works. So this is the report for May. Do you see that, Mr. President?
We do.
May, okay. So in May, we had a deposit of $50. This was just a donation made through PayPal. And then we had expenses of $1,472.11 in our operations account. And we have a balance of $9,327.03. There was no change to our reserves accounts for the scholarship and justice activities, and there was a withdrawal to the scholarships account of $499. I have corrected that through the bank because that money should have come out of our operation. So that correction will show up in our June report. So our balance in the scholarships account as of right now is $224,823.04. And that is the May report. Any questions, comments? Okay, Mr. President, over to you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. At this time, I'd like to seek a motion to adopt the April financial report as presented by the treasurer and subject to audit. Would any member like to make that motion?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Housing Chair. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Sister Dunkley. Any further discussion on the April financial report? Any questions, any comments, any concerns? Okay, well, all those members in favor of adopting and receiving that report as presented by the treasurer, I should say the April financial report subject to audit, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
All those members that oppose, you have the same right. Would you please say nay? Any members abstaining? Thank you. April report is received as presented. Would any member like to introduce a motion to adopt the May financial report as presented by the treasurer and subject to audit?
I will also make that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Housing Chair. And do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded to receive and adopt the May financial report as presented by the treasurer, subject to audit. Any further questions, comments, or concerns? All those members in favor, please say aye.
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 All those that oppose, please say nay. And any abstentions? Great. Let the record reflect both of those motions were unanimous. Thank you, Madam Treasurer, as always, for your diligence. I appreciate it.
you.
Thank you. Okay, great, folks. We're more than halfway through our agenda. Next up, I wanted to bring to your attention for the past several weeks and months, our branch has engaged outside counsel for the purpose of filing an amicus brief in the Circuit Court of Arlington. And so the action that we're about to take, or that we hopefully will take, will be to formalize the approval from the membership so that we can pass it on to the state conference and the national office for additional review, any edits, or any final changes before we actually file that amicus brief. And so at this time, Mr. Housing Chair, would it be appropriate for you to maybe provide an elevator version of what's been kind of happening in the background?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everybody. So I'm actually going to take off my housing chair hat and put on my outside counsel hat. So for the past few months, it has been my pleasure to work with some of our branch leaders to write an amicus brief. It's a friend of the court brief that the NAACP Arlington branch would submit as a friend of the court in the pending challenge to the missing middle litigation, also known as expanded housing options. So there's a lawsuit that is pending that challenges the ordinance on several grounds. This brief wouldn't try to litigate the whole case. That's for the parties to do. But we did feel that it was important to represent the perspective that the NAACP Arlington branch offers, and in particular, the history of Arlington's zoning policies, the ways in which that history still lives with us today, and some of the benefits of trying to move past it. And so with that, I am happy to answer any questions. With respect to the substance of the brief, you're also welcome to contact me offline, and I'd be happy to discuss it with you there.
Are there any questions? So again, just because of the sensitivity of this motion, we didn't have a very big meeting. We didn't have speakers. I wanted to also just be clear that we are not a named party in the lawsuit. We're simply filing an amicus brief. And we're talking about a perspective that the county, well, one, that isn't properly represented or currently represented, but two, that the county couldn't necessarily represent. Senator, did you have a question?
Mike, I do. May I ask you?
Yeah, please do.
I'm just curious, and I don't know the grounds for this lawsuit, but is somebody actually claiming damages or harm? Or, I mean, that would be one approach, or is another approach might be they believe the process was somehow didn't follow the Administrative Procedures Act? Could be a combination of both. Could you illuminate a little bit on what the grounds are for this lawsuit?
Mr. Harrell?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Senator Favola. I'm happy to answer that. So the short answer is it's both. So the plaintiffs allege that the county board committed several procedural fouls in trying to adopt the expanded housing options ordinance, as well as exceeded their authority in substantive ways by failing to consider certain information. So the way in which our brief can help inform the court's analysis is by focusing more on the substance. So we're staying away from whether the county kind of followed the right procedures in adopting the ordinance. What we're focused on are some specific questions surrounding the substance that the board considered and some of the history that informed that decision.
Well, another question, Mr. Schultz?
Of course.
I'm sorry. And if I'm asking anything that you feel is inappropriate to disclose, please just say so. So, I mean, I guess one of my other concerns is the lawsuit brought by a developer or neighbors or a combination? To me, I think there's some different perspectives in there, and I'm trying to figure out whose perspective is so aggressive that a lawsuit has to evolve from that.
It's a great perspective. So there were a lot of neighbors who spoke out during the process of adopting the ordinance and throughout the missing middle housing study. So the lawsuit is being brought by 9 homeowners, all Arlington residents. And the other side of the lawsuit is the county board. They're the ones who are being sued. And so we felt it was important for other perspectives to be shared because there was community support for the principles of the ordinance as well as the ordinance itself, as well as just the larger goals of trying to make our neighborhoods more inclusive, more integrated, and making sure that the county had the authority to do that. And so we feel it's an important perspective to represent in the lawsuit.
Last comment, Mr. Chair. I think it's what you've just articulated is some of the public benefit the county felt that they were gaining by going forward with missing middle. And whenever you make a decision in the public's interest, which your elected officials are supposed to do all the time, you're balancing, the public benefit versus whatever potential hardship or disadvantage that a particular group may suffer. So I guess I'm pleased that the amicus brief is being filed so there can be yet another articulation of what the public good was. I mean, the county's going to be articulating that. The county attorney will be articulating that in defense of the county board. But I just think it's important to have other groups like the NAACP actually weigh in on it. So I'm saying kudos.
Well, thank you.
Go ahead, Ms. Latanya.
Hi, good afternoon or good evening. So is there anything that can be read that we can see what perspective we're coming from? I mean, it's to me, it sounds a little vague and I don't even know what questions to really ask. Is there anything that can be seen that we can kind of get a better perspective?
Not just yet. So right now, as Mr. Heminger said, the brief is going to be making its way through review by the State Conference and National General Counsel's office. And so while that's happening, we don't want to get out in front of them. But in the meantime, there are 2 things that you can do. One is you can talk to me offline, and I'd be more than happy to kind of go into detail about what the brief, kind of brings out and the facts and the history that it cites, etc. And you can also look at the NAACP's past advocacy. So on our website, there are copies of letters that the branch sent to the county in 2022 and 2023 on not just missing middle, but also zoning policies generally. So those will give you a pretty good idea from the perspective that the brief is coming from. And so much of the brief is just sort of expanding on and providing more of a basis for what's in those advocacy materials. I wish I could share more, but stay tuned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Madam Treasurer, looks like you might.
Your treasurer is on mute.
Well, sorry. Question, is there somewhere where we can read about the lawsuit itself?
So far, the public reporting, so there's a lot going on, but right now the lawsuit is in discovery and pretrial. And so that means there's a lot of paper being filed, but it's a lot of stuff that really only lawyers and judges care about. So there may be some other resources that can come available shortly to kind of give a more digestible version of what the lawsuit is about. I know it's been, for example, covered in Arl now. Some of the big decisions have gotten to this point. But I think hopefully in the coming weeks, there will be some more materials out there that give members of the public a kind of better idea of what the core issues are and what the real dispute is.
Okay, thank you.
One other question. Is there something that we as a body are going to need to vote on eventually regarding it?
Yes.
And when will that happen?
In a few moments.
Oh.
So I'll add a couple other notes of context. The executive committee did have an opportunity to review the amicus brief in its totality. There was feedback provided back to the outside counsel. And then the amicus brief does align with what National has called on all branches to do as it relates to eradicating exclusionary zoning practices. And so I wish that we could share more publicly. This is being recorded and it will go up onto our YouTube. However, if you would like a deeper dive, you can certainly reach out to our outside counsel. He'd be happy to kind of answer whatever questions he can answer. I just also want to acknowledge that, when this does become public, it will make the press. There will be opposition, fierce opposition. And so we have to be very delicate in our run up into how we land this, if this is what the membership chooses to do.
Question.
Please.
It's a little difficult to ask people to vote on something tonight that we're not quite understanding. So what I hear is people asking for a deeper understanding of all of this so that we can make an educated vote tonight.
Yeah, that's a great
I
question.
agree.
Yeah, I agree with you as well. And those are great questions. Madam Education Chair, give me one moment. I just wanted to call everyone's attention to, and perhaps we could read the draft language of the motion, and then, perhaps hear any amendments that you'd like to make. At this stage, we're only seeking to send it off to the Virginia State Conference and National for further review. Is that right, Mr. Harrell?
That's right. At some point, there may be an occasion to share it with parties whose interests roughly align with ours. In this case, it would be the county as the entity that is defending a policy that at least takes a step toward ending exclusionary zoning. But for right now, the authorization and the direction would be to share it internally within different levels of the NAACP.
To get feedback, and once we do have that final version, it would need to come before the membership an ultimate time, and at that time we'd be able to share the brief more fully. Madam Education Chair.
Oh, I was just going to suggest that we would pause the recording temporarily just to answer just preliminary questions. But if we have to wait till later, that's fine.
Thank you. That's great. Great feedback. I didn't think about that. So would members like to hear hear how the motion is currently written? See if you have any friendly amendments?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Would anyone like to introduce a motion regarding this topic?
Mr. President, I would.
Madam Assistant Secretary.
Recognizing that pursuant to a February 19th, 2024 agreement, the NAACP Arlington branch engaged outside counsel, Wells Harrell, to prepare and file an amicus brief in the Circuit Court for the County of Arlington, Virginia, in the case of Nordgren versus County Board of Arlington, to catalog the history of exclusionary zoning in Arlington, describe the segregated state of Arlington's residential neighborhoods today, and explain how eliminating exclusionary zoning expands housing opportunities for people of color. I move that the NAACP Arlington branch authorize Mr. Harrell to, 1, file an amicus brief within the scope of the February 2024 engagement agreement, along with a motion for leave to file the brief and supporting papers, provided that the Virginia State Conference and National General Counsel's Office do not object to the filing. And 2, share drafts of the amicus brief with the Virginia State Conference, the National General Counsel's Office, and a counsel for Arlington County on a confidential basis. And just to make clear, the Virginia State Conference and the National General Counsel's Office are those of the NAACP.
Great. Thank you for that motion. Would anyone like to second that?
Second.
Thank you, Sister Dunkley. So at this time, the floor is open for any further discussion, any comments, questions, amendments, any other concerns?
Question.
Go ahead.
So this is a statement sort of what our position is. We're not asking permission. We're not delving into the details of the case. We're merely sort of stating a position. So this position should not be new to anybody. It was the position the NAACP publicly took when the county board was debating the missing middle. So I guess that's sort of the context I would think about this, and there's nothing in that that really surprised me or should cause anybody to believe that there's something different from a previous statement that we've made. Is that fair?
Yes, that is fair. And I'd like to also add that that is our only fight in this lawsuit. So we are only seeking to represent the exclusionary zoning impacts, history, and legacy of single-family home zoning in Arlington. So that is all true and correct. Any other questions? Any comments? Go ahead, Ms. Chris.
Yeah, hi. I understand some of the background with the exclusionary housing, the redlining, et cetera. But I don't have a good background on what this suit is involved, what it involves and what the statement is. I really would have preferred to have a written statement, even on the screen, okay? Coming from an education background, listening to someone read a document is difficult for me. So I probably will be abstaining on this vote.
Mr. President, can I put it in the chat?
Please do.
Okay.
So if it pleases this body, why don't we take a 2-minute recess for the purpose of just reviewing that language further. And again, this is to actually send it off to the state conference and the National General Counsel's office for further review, edits, or any objections that they may have. So we have a lot more approvals to seek before this ever would get filed. So let's reconvene at 7:31 p.m. All right, I'm going to call us back to order. Mr. Harrell, if I may lean on you, and I know this might be a little too impromptu, but could you maybe speak to some of the positions that the branch has taken publicly via, some of the public statements and letters that we've written, just maybe a summary of what that has looked like?
Absolutely. So in early 2022, before the big announcement of the Missing Middle framework, but during the early stages of the Missing Middle housing study, the branch wrote to the county urging them to reform their zoning laws in light of the exclusionary and racist history of Arlington's land use policies dating back to the early part of the 20th century. So our letter talked about how, as a result of county policies, including single-family only zoning, Black people have been deliberately excluded from many of Arlington's neighborhoods. And on top of that, the growth of Arlington's historically Black neighborhoods had been suppressed, again, by county policy. Then the county released their Missing Middle framework, proposing to legalize up to 8 plexes. And again, the NAACP Arlington branch wrote to support that initiative and support that framework. Fast forward to early 2023, when the county board decided to advertise a version of what they now call the Expanded Housing Options Ordinance that scaled back some of the ambition and some of the housing choices that would have been offered under the prior framework. And to that end, we wrote a letter in February of 2023 opposing those restrictions and urging the county to pass an expansive version in order to expand housing opportunities for people of color to the biggest extent, noting these ways in which making housing more expensive under the plan disproportionately impacts people of color, including renters. And then finally, we worked with our National General Counsel's office, and they submitted their own letter in March of 2023, reiterating the positions that we took in our own advocacy. And so everything in the brief is built out of those positions.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. Is there any additional questions, any comments, any concerns?
I have a question, another
Please.
question, sorry.
Go ahead.
So if this does not pass, what does that mean? What happens at that point?
It would need to pass the general membership in order for us to take it to the state conference, in order for general counsel to properly review it. So they will not lay eyes on it until the general membership says, yes, we want general counsel to review it. We want the state conference to review it.
Thank you.
I have a question also, and if that does occur, the state conference approves it, and if they make recommendations and amendments, will it come back to us before it's finalized?
Yes, absolutely. So we are bound by the governance of the state conference, and state conference is bound by the bylaws of the national organization. And so once the state conference executive committee reviews the amicus brief, they will provide any edits, feedback. They'll send it back to us. We'll update those versions, get it reapproved, and then it'll go off to general counsel. Our branch, as you'll recall, is one of the most active, most engaged branches in the entire country. So much so that national is seeking to model national policies off of our local advocacy. And so I imagine that once state conference gets this and once national reviews it, it will become a model for branches across the nation to also understand different tools that they can leverage in their pursuit of eradicating exclusionary zoning. Mr. Harrell, for those of us that are not familiar in the legal field, could you help us understand what exactly an amicus brief is, how they've been used historically in the past, and why people typically file amicus briefs?
I'd be happy to, Mr. President. So an amicus brief is a friend of the court brief. That's what amicus curiae means. They are filed by non-parties, so outside individuals or groups who aren't plaintiffs or defendants in a lawsuit. And they are filed in order to express a viewpoint to the court because the non-party, the amicus, has an interest in the case and its outcome and a perspective to offer that would be useful to the court. So I've worked on and filed many amicus briefs in my own practice. So this will be the latest of many that I have filed. And a core purpose is to give the court a fuller understanding of the stakes of the case and also be able to develop some expertise on issues that may be outside of what the parties are putting in.
Thank you.
I should also add, I completely hear the frustration. I really wish that I could share a draft with you all. Right now, I will say, the draft is running close to 25 pages long, so it's a pretty extensive brief. But that's simply because there's a lot of history here. And even there's a lot of history to be condensed. Much of what the brief relies on is a PhD dissertation about the history of Arlington's land use policies that is itself, I believe, over 400 pages long. And that's just one of many, many sources that we rely on.
Mr. Harrell, when is the trial set for?
It is currently set to begin on July 8th.
Senator.
In essence, I think what we're asking the group to do, and correct me if you don't think the context is right here, but I think you're asking us to give permission for the local branch to sort of run this up the flagpole, if you will, and just merely get permission. We're not changing our positions in any way. We're not going to change the strategy in the amicus brief. We're just asking permission to really participate in this through an amicus brief. Is that correct? Is it really that simple?
That is correct.
Okay, well, I mean, short of analyzing the amicus brief, which I don't have time to do, nor would our council want to share that with us on a video recorded meeting. I am philosophically in favor of having the NAACP file an amicus brief, and I trust that we will embrace the best strategy possible to bolster the county's case. So I'm in agreement with the request.
Thank you, Madam Senator. Ms. LaTanya.
I'm sorry, this is probably gonna be my last question. But so if we already, the NAACP already has a position, we're not changing any position. So why do we need to go back to do this amicus brief if they already know our position?
The court doesn't, I mean, unless they have taken their own initiative to research our position, the court at this point isn't familiar with our position. So all we're seeking to do, once it's properly approved, is to raise our perspective. The litigation as it stands now, Mr. Harrell, correct me if I'm wrong, there is no exclusionary zoning or there's no racial discrimination component of the case. And so what we're asking the judge to do is, in addition to, the plaintiff and defendant's case, this is a perspective, an important perspective that we think the court needs to consider. Is that right, Mr. Harrell?
Basically, yes. So I believe that issues about the impacts of the ordinance will be an issue in the case, including the ways in which they, help or hurt different demographic groups. But as Mr. Heminger explained, an important thing that we can do with this brief is to make sure that the court knows the NAACP's perspective on those issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Okay, great. So there's a motion on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded. I'm going to read the motion one final time. Recognizing that pursuant to a February 19, 2024 agreement, NAACP Arlington branch engaged outside counsel Wells Harrell to prepare and file an amicus brief in the circuit court for the County of Arlington, Virginia, in the case of Nadron versus County Board of Arlington, to catalog the history of exclusionary zoning in Arlington, describe the segregated state of Arlington's residential neighborhoods today, and explain how eliminating exclusionary zoning expands housing opportunities for people of color. It was moved that the NAACP Arlington branch authorized Mr. Harrell to 1, file an amicus brief within the scope of the February 19, 2024 engagement agreement, along with the motion for leave to file the brief and supporting papers, provided that the Virginia State Conference and National General Counsel's Office do not object to the filing, and 2, share the drafts of the amicus brief with the Virginia State Conference, the National General Counsel's Office, and the Council for Arlington County on a confidential basis. Will all those members in favor of supporting that motion, would you please say aye?
Aye.
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 And will all those members who oppose, would you please say nay? Any members abstaining?
Abstaining.
Thank you. So I hear Miss Willie Jackson, you're abstaining, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then of course I would expect our housing chair and council to abstain. Any other abstentions?
And I'm abstaining.
Okay, great. Thank you, Miss Winifred. Okay, great. Thanks, folks. This is not the last time that this will come before the membership. We have a couple more steps that we need to take. And again, for those of you that would like a one-on-one consultation with our outside counsel, I encourage you to reach out. We'd be happy to provide a little bit more detail. Okay, great. I'm going to move us to the last agenda item. Thought it was going to be a quick meeting, but those are all excellent questions, and that's why we have the membership. The membership is ultimately the governing body of our branch. So I appreciate the due diligence and I appreciate those questions. Madam Legal Redress Chair, I hate to put you on the spot, but would you mind telling us a little bit about the media strategy that the Thompson family is seeking?
Hi, yes. Good evening, everyone. Sorry, I just joined and sorry for the background noise. So the Thompson family reached out to us for support. I don't know how much detail you want me to go into. The family learned that one of their loved ones had lost contact with them. He was unhoused at the time, and they reached out to try and find him and found out that he had passed away. And the Arlington County Police Department had petitioned for his body to be cremated and didn't notify them as next of kin. So that's pending internal investigation and an investigation with the Community Oversight Board. They are, the anniversary of his death is coming up on July 3rd, and they want to have a celebration where they go to the area where he passed away and do some kind of event. It's not exactly planned yet. What it will be, like a release of balloons, some people will be speaking, and they're looking for support by us being there and also by notifying the media about what they're doing to celebrate Tory Thompson's life.
Great. Could you tell us just briefly about the Poor People's Campaign March that weekend?
Yeah, we think Ms. Thompson is going to also be speaking at the Poor People's Campaign March, which will be on June 29th. It's not confirmed yet, but they did ask her to speak, and she sent notes of what she would be saying. Their campaign addresses, poverty is, a #1 issue for death, basically related to poverty. And so his story would fit in that area. And they're going to be doing a march, bringing in busloads of people from all over the United States to come on June 29th to Washington, D.C. by the monument and have speakers. And she will be probably one of the speakers. That's what's anticipated.
Great. Thanks so much, Madam Legal Redress Chair. So ultimately what we're seeking to do is a combination of two things. One, we're seeking permission from the membership to draft a media advisory. This will simply alert the media that we will be assembling on or near the anniversary of Tory Thompson's death to memorialize the occasion, but to also just kind of amplify the message. And then two, the actual press conference component of the media advisory. So one is to let the press know we're going to be meeting, and two would be the actual press conference, likely at the site of Mr. Tory Thompson's death. So would anyone like to introduce that motion?
I can make the motion if I thought Kathleen might, since I wasn't going to be here. Thank you. So just the motion, exactly as you just said. I'm going to mute now.
I second.
Okay, great. There's a motion on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded. It's for the NAACP Arlington branch to draft a media advisory and to host a press conference at or around the anniversary of Tory Thompson. Is there any further discussion on that? Any questions, comments, concerns? Any amendments? Go ahead.
Can you put Tory's name? I'm not familiar with what happened. Can you put, I'm assuming there's an article probably out there somewhere. Can you, nothing?
Not yet.
There's not an article yet. That's part of what she wants support in. But his name's Tory Thompson. He passed away from a fentanyl overdose in July of last year outside of the Econo Lodge.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so that's a great question. What we're seeking to do is to actually help amplify Tory's story. From our understanding, from records that we've seen or come across, there are dozens of other cases like that in Arlington. And so we believe that there needs to be stronger protections in what procedures look like for notifying next of kin. There's been some treatment issues just on how the situation was handled. And so we're hoping to just kind of amplify that, tighten up the protections. If there are other families out there that have experienced something similar, we're hoping that gives them some courage to also reach out to kind of seek closure as well. This family, that's what they're seeking ultimately. It's just closure and resolution on their loved one's passing. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Great, hearing none. Will all those members in favor of that motion, would you please say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And all members who oppose, please say nay. Any members abstaining? Okay, great. Thanks so much. That concludes our agenda. One last announcement about Juneteenth. We will have a table set up. We're looking for volunteers. It's 4 to 7. You can even do just a 30-minute shift, hang out at the table, help get new members, talk to the community about what the NAACP does. It'd be greatly appreciated. Please reach out to myself or the secretary or really any executive committee member. We'd love to have you, even if it's just for 30 minutes. And if you can't help at the table, I hope to see you at the Juneteenth event on Wednesday, 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. And please don't forget to vote if you haven't voted already. Tomorrow's your last opportunity. Thanks so much, everybody. It's going to be a great week. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Stay cool.